What's up, everybody? It's We Are So Back Wednesday. Just kidding, guys. Thanks again for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday live podcast. It is good to be back. Man, I had a good 2 weeks off. I know you guys enjoyed the pre-recorded shows. I saw a lot of you really liked that. So we're going to keep doing that. Thanks so much, Brad. I appreciate you, man. I had to do that, but I hope you guys enjoyed the pre-recorded shows. It's been kind of a good break. It was good for me to get kind of like my head back together in the game, because sometimes at the end of the season I get a little bit burnt out, and it's not because of the show itself. It's I'm also working a 9 to 5, and I got a family on top of all this too. So it's kind of nice to always take the last 2 weeks off, kind of refresh my mind, refresh everything, and be nice and fresh for you guys when I come back for the third season or the next season. But 3 years of BG-Cast, going on 3 years now, guys. It's very interesting. I kind of look back at myself from when I first started, and I didn't know my head from a hole in the ground on what the hell I was doing, and here we are. So 3 seasons later, this is pretty cool. So I'm grateful to be back. I'm grateful to be back with all of you. I have a whole bunch of new followers that I got over my break too. I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for coming over to the BG-Cast Collective. It's really nice to see everybody coming to check everybody out over here, especially myself. But I got 2 cool presents for my wife for Christmas. As of course, you can see the first one. I'm wearing these real life, actual thug life glasses. And also, now, if this is an OG model, this is an original model, but if you all would like something like this, let me know, because I'm going to start pumping these out. I think it's time we start taking everything to the next level here, and why not get some cool stuff out to you guys to rep BG-Cast? That would be awesome. Also, I'm not advertising it publicly, but if you would like to be a part of this, let me know. I've shot out messages to certain people. I will be shooting out a message to my guest too after the show if he's interested in joining. But I have started a Discord. It is called the BG Collective, and it's for everybody to get together, share information, share knowledge, learn from each other, and establish networking and community in a healthy way. I'm trying to only let people in who are ready to take the next steps, people who are about solutions and things of that nature. So I haven't been kind of advertising it publicly, but if you would like to be a part of the BG Collective, let me know. Hit me up on X or Facebook or IG, or leave a comment here on the Rumble or the YouTube or the X video. And I will get you into the BG Collective, guys. So nonetheless, let me take these off. They're making me a little bit dizzy right now. I have a really awesome guest sitting in the waiting room right now. We're about to bring him on. He is the producer of my network. On top of that as well, he is the owner and the head of the Understanding Propaganda and the Bloody History podcasts. He is a very intelligent guy. The first time I had him on my show, I was completely blown away. So I'm probably getting ready to get blown away again, which I'm completely fine with. But nonetheless, let's bring on Mr. Cory Hughes. What's happening there, Cory?
Hello.
How's it going, man? Thanks for joining me tonight.
No problem. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good. It's kind of good to get you back on. It's been a little bit. So real quick for the audience and people who might not know who you are, Cory, why don't you explain just a little bit about yourself, how you've cracked the JFK assassination, and and what your next steps are in some of these new realizations that you've made about the JFK assassination as well. Because I remember when I was sitting there talking with you at Friendsgiving not too long ago, you said you figured out some new stuff. So I'm definitely really interested to hear what you found out.
Sure. So I've been on Kennedy full time now for 6.5 years. And it's the most important event in American history, possibly world history. You got bigger events. You got Caesar, you got Napoleon, right? You have bigger characters, bigger things that shaped larger events. But The Kennedy assassination is by far the most famous, the most well-known, the most talked about, speculated upon event in human history, at least as far as the goes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it seems as though no matter what country you are from, no matter what country you live in, the mystery surrounding the Kennedy assassination seems to penetrate barriers. You know, everybody, no matter who you are, wants to know what happened to John F. Kennedy. And so I needed to know, just like everyone else. And the unfortunate thing with Kennedy research is that you have people out there, you have had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books written on the assassination. You've had dozens of books that said things like Kennedy solved, and then they summarize the assassination as being said, saying that the CIA killed Kennedy, right? What, to me, the answers like that are a cop-out. The CIA killed Kennedy. What the fuck does that mean?
I feel that's a generalization. I think it's a generalization.
Yep. And so that wasn't good enough. And I was tired of the arrogance of people saying they solved Kennedy and saying that the CIA did it, and that means they solved it, and fuck you. Like, I'm sorry. I'm kind of an arrogant dick. And when it comes to Kennedy, I'm really arrogant because I've watched my whole life. And I've kind of followed with Kennedy research kind of my whole life, really, since the movie came out back in like 92 when I was like, 16 years old. It's always been a fascination of mine, but I didn't really take it seriously until I really had the time to become a historian starting in 2015. And by 2018, I started with Hitler and the Nazis because that's where every historian of the 20th century should start. Unless you want to start with World War I, but that's a whole nother ball of wax there. So, but Kennedy was so important that it was worth dedicating my life to, because the country deserves to know, at least if no other reason, to put to rest most of the bullshit conspiracy speculation, because the vast majority of nonsense that we hear doesn't come from official story people. We know what they're going to say. Lee Harvey Oswald did it, and he did it alone. That I would expect from those people. But the most of the disinformation and misinformation, and I hate those words in particular, that is spread about Kennedy comes from the conspiracy community.
Oh, absolutely.
People want the driver to have done it, or that Malcolm Wallace was in the 6th floor, or that Ricky White, helped frame Oswald, or what's his name? That one guy shot Kennedy from the knoll with a mercury-loaded bullet. I mean, like, there's just so much garbage out there.
Well, there's a lot of people who think Bush Sr. also had a hand in that. What are your thoughts?
Well, here's the deal. People don't understand. Like, Bush Sr. took over the CIA in what year? 1973, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That's 10 years after the assassination. Who was George Bush in 1963? He was a fucking nobody. Okay. People like to think because he was a bigwig later and he spent his entire presidency cleaning up after the assassination. Like, when you look at certain things George Bush did in the 4 years he was in office, like the invasion of Panama, who the fuck was Noriega's right-hand man, particularly in the cocaine stuff down in Panama when they were invaded? A guy named Michael Harari. Michael Harari, who I believe is the basically the umbrella man in Dealey Plaza, who was a fucking Mossad spy who was stationed in Mexico City at the time of the assassination, was totally new and worked with all the guys in our cast of characters from New Orleans, right? So when you come across things like this, you'll see like little hints of connection, right? You'll see like Michael Harari was a name dropped by Michael Collins Piper, who identified him as the umbrella man. And then when you start to dig into Michael Harari, you find that he was stationed in Mexico City. Then you find that some of our cast of characters, like William Seymour and Lawrence Howard and some of these guys, spent a couple weeks down in Mexico City, rumored to have been with him and a guy named Guy Gabaldon, right? And so you get little bits and pieces here. You get rumor, you get speculation, you get little one-liners from an FBI report, and you have to construct a model of what happened and who was involved in certain events or series of events. based on just little tidbits like this, right? And it's just like a puzzle. Sometimes the pieces fit and sometimes they don't fit. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So a great example is that everybody keeps trying to associate Oswald with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, which is ridiculous. He never was associated with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. He was being framed. His association with them was as far as he was handed flyers, told to go hand them out, and the flyers had Fair Play for Cuba Committee stamped on them, right? That's it. That's the closest association that we have. However, we have numerous witnesses who attempt to put Oswald in Tampa, Florida in late October, early November of 1963, meeting with the guys who were the head of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee down in Tampa at the time, a guy named Vincent Lee, and Frank Sturgis, otherwise known as Frank Fiorini. He was one of these witnesses, right? So you get the shadiest of witnesses attempting to link Oswald with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee and communist things in general, and they're like completely fake, right? And so once you start to realize that some of these allegations against him are impossible, like he could never have been in Florida meeting with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee in November or October of 1963, either one, because I pretty much mapped out everything he was doing like day to day during those time periods. Well, there's a lot of gaps, and during those gaps, we have no fucking idea what he was doing. You know, was he out of town on missions? I mean, I think he was working for the FBI doing stuff out of town. I think the entire thing with Oswald is they were keeping him out of town, keeping him away from their activities, keeping him busy while they were framing him. Like people went to the fucking shooting range and were shooting at other people's targets. Everybody at the range identified Oswald, but was it Oswald?
It's almost as if like he was an unknowing actor. And,
you're right.
And
yes.
Exactly. He was an unknowing actor. He was being kind of formatted and formulated to be put in this position and in this role.
Right. And so also when you look at the jobs that he all took, every single one of them was connected to CIA, even the ones that seemed mundane. Like he worked for Riley Coffee Company. Riley Coffee Company was connected to Allied Coffee Company and another coffee company under an umbrella corporation. And
that's how they do it, though. That they always do it out of these umbrella companies, and
right?
They do it out of these like strawman companies.
Yeah. Correct. And so Oswald was allegedly a mechanical. He's supposed to like oil the machines and stuff that ground up the coffee, right? It was a coffee roaster, right? And so, you know, when you look at like when he was supposed to have worked there and what he was supposed to have done there, and every job that he has, he gets paid a normal paycheck, but then you always have one witness who worked there who pops up and goes, man, I almost never saw that guy. I saw him come in and he would get a check and that was be it. I'd never see him again. And next thing you know, he's coming to get another check. I'm like, what the fuck? Right. But then you have like the boss saying, oh, he was a great worker and all this stuff, you know? So it's obvious that some of these jobs, and then who else did he work for? Jaggers Charles Stovall, which was a company who was a defense contractor who developed film of the U-2 photos, right? The U-2 top secret airplane would take photographs, and Oswald, a fucking communist Soviet defector, just so happens to get a job there where you would need a top secret clearance. Give me a fucking break. And then the Texas School Book Depository. Like, you think the CIA just lets any Joe Schmo print textbooks? No, because that's where the narrative starts, in the brainwashing in schools with textbooks. So of course the CIA controls the textbook industry, and Oswald worked there. So everywhere he fucking goes, Oswald's connected to the CIA. Every person he meets, he's connected to the CIA, and everyone denies he had anything to do with the CIA. It's absolutely fucking unbelievable that a guy who had nothing to do with the CIA happened to never meet anybody who wasn't connected to the CIA. It's really just fucking a head scratcher. You know what I mean? So
that's weird. It almost seems like I mean, they had him picked out a while ago, because if you look at, you know, exactly what you're saying about how he had all these affiliations with these companies that were under these umbrella companies ran by these intelligence agencies, it almost to me seems like they had an eye on him from the start, perhaps before he even had any idea. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oswald is a groomed from birth.
Okay.
So that's what I've been studying the past like 6 months or so. And here's the deal. What I'm working on now is basically the two Oswald theory. And I'm going to tell you with 100% certainty, it's no longer a theory. This is 100% reality.
So two Oswalds. Okay.
And this is what they were hiding. And the idea that they would actually use Oswald as a patsy, which would leave a trail to this operation that they were obviously pulling since the early days of, honestly, had to have been naval intelligence prior to CIA, at least who started this. And then they offloaded it to CIA while they were running their AE Balcony and AE Ocean programs and all the AE prefix programs in the 50s and 60s, which had to do with getting a spy into the Soviet Union. So I think that's all this was. I think the duplicate Oswald program, which I think was very real, was a very early, not only experiment, it was a program, but it was also an experiment to create a legend, which is a fake background of a person in order to get them into the Soviet Union. And you have to ask yourself, in 1940, let's just start in 47 with the CIA, okay? Because it's even hard for me to wrap my head around pre-47 intelligence operations, but there were some, because we had intelligence going back to the Revolutionary War. You know, there were body doubles involved with the Lincoln assassination and John Wilkes Booth. So
absolutely.
Fucking Jesus Christ. I mean, you think that was the CIA in fucking 1800s? No. So who the fuck could it have possibly been who was doing this kind of stuff, doing intelligence operations of this kind of deception work? It had to have been Office of Naval Intelligence. And I think this is the ultimate secret of all time that they're hiding, because I don't think there's much left in the documents for them to. The documents will show relationships that shouldn't exist. That's it. The documents aren't going to have any smoking guns, right? They're going to show the relationships between Jack Valenti, because a mountain of his files are hidden, David Morales, maybe Charles Taurine, a couple other guys, the connection between a whole lot of Secret Service reports are going to be fucking hidden because they were complicit in the assassination. Stuff surrounding Kenny O'Donnell, Dave Powers, these guys, all their files are going to be hidden forever. So what are they fucking hiding that has any impact on anything?
Well, the one thing I want to say real quick that you brought up that's really interesting. I mean, you were talking about the double, and you were talking about the double with Lincoln and things like that. I think one of the things a lot of people don't understand, a lot of people want to scoff that off as a conspiracy, but we can look at.
That's what they do. The CIA is in the conspiracy business.
It is, but it's like, you look at a lot of how many like kings throughout history, how many people have had like body doubles and triples just in case somebody were to try to assassinate them. It's not that far out of the realm of possibility.
No, and have you seen the pictures of all the different fucking Osama bin Ladens? Dude,
yes, I have. Yes, I have. I've
like
seen
6
that
of them,
photo.
bro. That is clear cut. They did that stuff. All you got to do is, like, if I go to fucking Google and I just put in CIA use of decoys, because that's what these are. They're decoys, right? Holy shit. You'll get all kinds of articles. You get articles from Business Insider, 8 global figures who use political decoys. That's all a duplicate is. And people will like freak out and say you're a conspiracy asshole for being like, oh, there's 2 Oswalds. Well, imagine this. It's the 1930s, the 1940s, naval intelligence, who at the time is working with the State Department. And who's the State Department at the time? Allen Dulles, John Foster Dulles, Bill Donovan, all these guys working for Roosevelt who will go on to become CIA. They're all in bed with fucking these covert operations that are happening via the State Department and their connections to the military. And trust me when I tell you, Dulles was involved, had his hands in everything. He was involved in the Treaty of Versailles. He had meetings with Hitler in 1936. If that motherfucker, if there were ever aliens, it was Allen Dulles who met with them. Okay. So Allen Dulles knew everything about everything on planet Earth of all time. I have no fucking doubts. If we were interdimensional shit, he knew about it in 1950 something, right? So he's the guy. So Allen Dulles connected through, and Hoover is involved in this too somehow, because, and I'll give you a great example. One of the ways that we know that there is a duplicate Oswald is because when you look at the what jobs were held at what times and in what cities, you have pockets of overlap that shouldn't exist. You have Oswald going to school in 2 different cities. You have him working in 2 different cities. You got him living in 2 different cities at 2 different addresses. It's even if only for a couple weeks, you know what I mean? And then they up and disappear. But a good example of this is
so wild.
One of the jobs was for I forget exactly what they did, but he was a messenger of some kind. He only worked there for a week. It was called the J.R. Michaels Company. It was in New Orleans. And the day after the assassination, FBI agents show up there and they're like, we need your records of Lee Harvey Oswald when he worked here. And everyone looks at the FBI and they're laughing. They're like, Lee Harvey Oswald worked here. Ha ha. Bullshit. Nobody in the business remembered him whatsoever. There was no trace of Lee Harvey Oswald that ever worked there. They said, we need you to look in your files under this date. And they gave a specific date. And they looked under the files under that date, and they found 1 week's pay stub for Lee Harvey Oswald.
No
so
shit.
What does that tell you? It tells you the only person in the world who knew that Oswald had worked there was J. Edgar Hoover.
That's so wild.
How the fuck did J. Edgar Hoover know Oswald worked at J.R. Michaels Company for 1 week in 1956? How the fuck did he know that? And nobody else knew it. Because
there's obviously something covert going on there.
Right. It's obvious something. Exactly. And so what that means is that Hoover was in on the dual Oswald thing going all the way back, because he must have had an exact record of where Oswald worked. And there are weird things that happen, like in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is a fascinating study, because you're like, how could they possibly get away with 2 Oswalds in the Marine Corps at the same time? At least give one a different name while he's in training and say they're brothers. Like, that's all you got to do. Say this is Joe Oswald and this is Lee Harvey Oswald, and they're brothers, and keep them somewhat in the same place, right? And then when they get out, you destroy the records. That's all you got to do. But no, they've got them both as Lee Harvey Oswald doing things, both stationed in Atsugi, Japan at the same time.
That's
the weird part is, like, I'm investigating what ships they went out on routine, like not missions, but like exercises on. There's 2 in particular. One, they went out and they went to like the Philippines, and which is like Corregidor and Subic Bay and a couple places like that where Oswald was stationed. And another time they went to Taiwan. And the Taiwan trip is funny because here's proof. This is, to me, absolute proof that during the Marine Corps, while they were both in the Marine Corps, they were doing the dual Oswald thing, because we have simultaneously Oswald gets venereal disease. Okay. So he has gonorrhea while he's stationed in Atsugi. This is in late August. He's being treated for like 4 months for fucking gonorrhea. It's unbelievable how long this guy's dick was dripping. Okay. 4 months. So every opportunity this guy got to be in the hospital, he was in the hospital. Right. So, first, when he first gets there, he allegedly accidentally shoots himself in the arm. And then he's in the infirmary for like 6 fucking weeks. Right. He's out of the action for 6 weeks. Then when he gets back into action, a couple days later, he gets on a boat, goes to the Philippines, and that opens a world of mystery and questions I'm still working on. But when it comes to the second trip to Taiwan, which is, he only did 2 big trips like this, the one to Taiwan, you've got Lee Harvey Oswald provably in Atsugi in the infirmary starting around September the 14th or 15th, where he's being treated for venereal disease, and he has rectal bleeding. So you tell me.
That's an interesting combination. That's an
interesting combination, isn't it? So, but at this exact same time that he is confirmed 100% to have been at Atsugi and been treated for like a 6-week period for venereal disease, we also have absolute confirmation of him being on a boat, the Skagit, the USS Skagit, that went to Taiwan. While he's in Taiwan, in late September, early October, he is on guard duty. Okay, because despite the fact that we're told he's a radar operator, he's not a radar operator. The closest I can get him to a radar unit is where he does the clear board stuff, where the radar operators call out information and he puts it on the clear board. That is as close to a radar unit as I can get him. I can't get him, not one time as a witness, put him in a chair behind a radar unit. So, but he's in Taiwan, and around October the 4th, he's on guard duty and he has like a freak out incident and he shoots his gun into the woods. And this guy named Robinson, who's with him out there, who's like his superior officer on guard duty, comes running over. He's like, "What's up? What's going on?" He's like, "I swear to God, I saw something in the woods." And so he shot it in the woods, and then he drops his weapon. He freaks out. And he's like, "I just can't be on guard duty anymore." So he gets in trouble. And 2 days later, they put him on a plane and they fly him back to Atsugi. Okay. The official story says the next day that this guy who flew back from Taiwan then will be admitted to the hospital where he's treated for a colonoscopy because of his rectal bleeding. But do you see, they're trying to meld two different stories because
they're trying to create a paper trail. They're trying to me, what it looks like is they're trying to create what I would say is a prominent diversion paper trail. And I mean, at least that's what comes to mind with what you're saying, because it seems like they're trying to confuse. Like, you have this prominent paper trail that he was doing. He was in the Philippines. He caught this venereal disease, but then somehow he's in Taiwan, and we have these later records about this.
Let me ask. I'm going to screen share this if I'm
absolutely. Yeah. Bring it up, and I'll bring it on.
So
there you go.
Can you see what I'm seeing?
Absolutely.
All right. So this is the Skagit, and this is paperwork from the Skagit on September 14th. It clearly says that Lee Harvey Oswald was on this boat, right? And then he was on the boat. We got witnesses who put him on the boat, and then we have the incident on we have the incident later on October 4th where him shooting in the woods. That's all very well documented, and him being sent back is documented. It's kind of funny because the Warren Commission, they concluded that he did go to Taiwan and that he was treated for his venereal disease and stuff while he was on the boat. Okay. But yet, when it came to the House Assassinations Committee in the 90s, they went to the Department of Defense. Department of Defense said, absolutely not. He did not go to Taiwan. He remained behind in a rear echelon unit. They had very specific information in a rear echelon unit at Atsugi and did not go to Taiwan. And so the House Committee on Assassinations, when they concluded all this, they concluded Oswald did not go to Taiwan because the DOD said so. That's exactly how they wrote it out too. It's hilarious. They're like, Oswald did not go to Taiwan because the DOD told us so. And that was how they implied that they were bullied into that answer, right? So
that's so wild, man, because it's one of the biggest things that I've seen is, back then when a lot of this stuff was going on, it's almost as if I don't want to say they were sloppier, but it was a little bit different because now that we're in the age of the internet, and we have, instant information, instant post, it's a lot harder for them to get away with something like this.
Right. But I bet they're sloppy in ways that we don't
yet understand.
In 20, 30 years, computer nerds and researchers will understand the technological, primitive stages that they were in and will be able to decipher their bullshit, right? But not us. Like, they didn't have any idea there'd be an internet that I'd be able to pull the life story of every single fucking character. And they thought that it would be hidden to history, and the history books would write up what the newspapers put out, and that would be the end of it. They never anticipated a Warren Commission, a House Committee on Assassinations. They never planned any of that shit. They never thought an internet would pop up. They never thought people would give a fuck. They thought it would all be lost to history and that they could lock the documents for 75 years. And after that, it would be like nobody would remember.
Well, it's like
motherfuckers, history never forgets. History does not forget. It will never allow you to forget. I don't give a fuck if the internet disappeared 2,000 years from now. They would have some way of reconstructing something, right? Like, we dig up these ancient temples and stuff, and we're able to reconstruct the past because history doesn't ever go away. So
no, absolutely, man. And the one thing I wanted to say that was very interesting too. I'm sure a lot of the listeners and viewers know this, but this was the original incident where the term conspiracy theorist originated from.
Yeah, I don't even like the term because it belittles everything we do.
Absolutely. But with this is what made, this is, at least in my eyes, this situation is what set into the American societal norm that it is, quote unquote, bad or disrespectful to question the official narrative. And I mean, you just said that. I mean, full bore when you were talking about, because the DOD told us,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it just shut down any further questioning. And I think that stigma lasted in our American society. I mean, even when it came to 9/11, we both, you and I, know what really went on. But for everybody that was questioning the official story, even back in 2001, they were like ostracized. They were shunned. You know what I mean? So this kind of opens the door to all of that and how this began.
So on the 14th, we have this proof right here that he was on. This is a diary sheet. This is a Marine Corps diary. They have them every day. It's kind of printed up, and any changes to a unit, or if they're sent somewhere, you don't have them every single day, because if nothing changes in a day, then they don't have a reason to draw anything up. But everything changes. Somebody gets out on sick. Somebody does something, they get moved around. So every day you usually find one of these. And so it's got Oswald clearly on here on the 14th on the Skagit heading to Taiwan, right? And then, but here you have Captain Donabedian, and all the medical stuff is listed under the Donabedian exhibit. And so Captain Donabedian says he was admitted to the sick list on 9/16/58. Diagnosis: urethritis acute due to gonococcus, which is gonorrhea. This is number 0303. And then I got a whole list of these here. And you can see this is the proof that he was at Atsugi and not on the boat, because it says NAS Navy 3858 right here. And that 3858 is the number of the Atsugi Naval Hospital. So 3835, there we go. That's it right there. And it never changes. And then when he is actually treated at Yokosuka Hospital, it's got a different number that starts with 39, right? Okay. So, but he was there on the 16th. He's there on the 20th, the 22nd, the 23rd. He's still, look at this. He's got urethral discharge like every fucking day. And
I'm trying not to laugh at it, because it's like, I mean, dude, 4 weeks of gonorrhea. It's like
4 months of gonorrhea, and you want to laugh. You want to laugh at something. Laugh at the fact that instead of getting kicked out of the military, which is what would happen to most guys back then, they wrote it up as he got it in the line of duty. He was babied. There were times that this motherfucker should have been kicked out of the military, like numerous times, and he wasn't. But here, this is more proof that he was still at Atsugi. It says in 16 September 58. It says to main side for smear. Main side, if you dig into Atsugi, the base, there were two halves to the camp base. And it's one half was called East Camp and the other half was main side. So that's as much proof as you need that he was still at the base at main, and he was sent to main side to be medically tested for a smear, in which he got tested. And so here's even more dates. September 29th, 58, he got more discharge. Then October 6th. October 6th is a date that is in big question here, because October 6th, while he's being treated for his urethral discharge, that exact same day, the other Oswald is put on a plane and flown back to Atsugi, and they try to do a swaparoo here. Let me see if I still have. Yeah, so they try to do a swaparoo, because this is the Oswald sheet. This is the diary that shows MACS-1 Mag 11. Lee Oswald, and he's in Taiwan. That's the unit that he was in. Okay. But the other unit that the other Oswald was in, it's kind of faded, but it says subunit MACS-1. The subunit was a maintenance squad, like a mechanic squad, right? So it's a completely different squad, and these are two different diary entries on the exact same day in two different fucking places, right? To me, it doesn't get any more slam dunk that they were running both of these guys through the Marines at the exact same time. And so the guy who gets sent back from, so we hear the story about him getting sent back because he freaked out on guard duty, but the official paperwork says he was sent back for medical reasons. And the medical reason was that he hurt himself because of heavy lifting. And then, so according to that, he is then on October the 7th, then admitted. Do I have that one? Yeah. He is then admitted. Here we go. Oswald to the hospital, right? But it's not that Oswald, because it's the Oswald that stayed behind in the subunit, not the Oswald who was away in Taiwan, right? And so they didn't think that people would sit there and try to decipher this shit, 60 years ago. You know what I mean? But
well, the one thing I want to commend you on, man, is because you put together a lot of pieces. I mean, you're dealing with, you're dealing with vague reports. You're dealing with, highly vague. You're going through all of this. I mean, and that's very good, man. I got to commend you for that because, especially after what you've just shown me right here. I mean, you can see plain as day that they were playing this switcheroo. They have these paper trails for these two different Oswalds, and it's funny that they I guess they didn't think down the road, at least at some point, or have the foresight that somebody was going to figure this out.
Right. So this is Lee Harvey Oswald. This is the real Lee Harvey Oswald here, and it's pretty obvious that all these pictures are the same person.
It is.
This is all the same person, but the reality is this is not the person who was arrested on November 22nd. That was this person here, who is clearly not the same person in any of these photographs. All 8 of these pictures are clearly the same person, but not the person that we just saw in any of these pictures. Notice the pictures go back to them being kids, right?
And you could see very, very, in the ears and the facial structure too, there's definitely details that you can notice.
Just clear. Here's the deal. It's like, they're close enough to where they have to be brothers or cousins. They have to be, they got to be closely related. Yeah. And so the speculation by John Armstrong was one of the first people to really push this idea of Harvey and Lee. And why Harvey and Lee? Is it just a play on words? No, absolutely not. When you go back through the documents here, now I'll show this real quick. When you go back through the original documents on Harvey Lee Oswald, you'll find there's 100 documents where the government was intentionally using the name Harvey Lee Oswald when they know that the guy's name is Lee Harvey Oswald. Look, so Harvey Lee Oswald was used on the roster of employees at Texas School Book Depository. Okay. 1950 census. Harvey Oswald is listed, not Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay. When Oswald applied for the Marines, it's clear the name Harvey Lee Oswald was first put in, but then erased and changed to Lee Harvey Oswald. Also, he put in that he has hazel eyes. Oswald has light blue, pale blue eyes, not hazel eyes. So why would he put hazel? There's so much wrong with this application. It's crazy.
I agree. I think it's revealing. It's revealing a lot of their slip ups for sure.
Yeah, and then we have when Marguerite Oswald applied for a hardship discharge for Lee Harvey Oswald to get out of the Marine Corps, she put his name on the document Harvey Lee Oswald. Right. This pops up over and over and over again. Harold Weisberg determined that the Defense Intelligence Agency maintained a file, Harvey Lee Oswald, that was a distinctly separate file from Lee Harvey Oswald. But when he requested copies of it, they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. This person introduced themselves as Harvey to a number of people. When he took the boat to Europe, he introduced himself to everyone on the boat as Harvey Lee Oswald. We have numerous FBI reports referring to Harvey Lee Oswald. Jim Garrison and Bill Boxley, the DA in New Orleans and his investigation team, they totally were onto this to Oswald thing. And they knew that the FBI was onto it because they determined that internally at the FBI, they referred to the guy they arrested as Harvey Lee Oswald. That was how they referred to him at the FBI, not as Lee Harvey Oswald. And so then we have, like, here we go, Jim Garrison overtly talking about how the impersonation of Oswald seems to have started in the Marines, but it didn't start in the Marines. That would be 56. I have the first anomaly going back to 45 in the Benbrook Common School, where Oswald is simultaneously up in Boston with his mother and her new husband and going to school in Benbrook, Texas at the exact same time for a period of, let me see, from September to February of 1950 or 1946. So yeah, it's wild. I have those first anomalies going back to 45, 46.
And that's insane to me. That's insane to me. You look at, when the Kennedy assassination took place,
this has nothing to do with Kennedy. Don't confuse the two. This is a separate story. This is a story of this is the story of Oswald, and the story of Oswald and the story of Kennedy. They intersect for a very brief time period in November 1963, but other than that, have fucking nothing to do with each other whatsoever.
But it's so strange, man, because you have to think, it's like, what is it about this individual?
This is a plot to get a spy into the Soviet Union, and it just so happened to involve two kids who had family members who were in obviously some form of naval intelligence gig or army intelligence, because army intelligence had a thing too. That's the thing. We know absolutely zero about American intelligence pre-1941. Fucking fact. We know nothing about it at all. I'm going to have to start digging up some old fucking books about this stuff that has some old secrets in it. But we really, like, even me as a very well-educated person on the subject for many years was like, oh, American intelligence started in 41. Well, no, it didn't. It fucking didn't. And that's what they're hiding. That's what the documents will lead to. It'll lead to all this shit. It'll lead to body doubles. How many of our presidents weren't really our presidents?
That's a very good one that you just brought up. I mean, there's and like we even talked about before, it's not out of the realm of possibility for that to happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if American intelligence goes even farther back than we even realize. I mean, I would even, you were even talking the Revolutionary War. Yeah. I would definitely agree with that.
So I'm sure they were using body doubles and decoys and all that shit back then too. So you can't have two Lee Harvey Oswalds without having two Marguerite Oswalds, right? And so this is Marguerite Oswald, the real Marguerite Oswald, going back to 1935, 37. I mean, you can clearly tell that this is the same woman. She's not an ugly woman. She's a moderately attractive woman for the era. And she's kind of classy looking, right? She doesn't look all haggard and gross. This is a picture of her at Paul's shoe store in 1957.
Okay.
But yet the woman that we're told is Marguerite Oswald post 1959 is this woman here, who you will never, ever in the world see a picture of without those glasses. Those glasses will be in 100% of every photograph ever taken of her ever. She has a mole under her eye. She's kind of gruesome and haggard. And this picture here in the middle in 1960 was taken at the exact same time that this picture on the right-hand side was taken, right?
You're looking at two completely different people.
Two completely different people, not even close to the same woman, right? Yeah. We are told that this is Marguerite Oswald, and it's clearly two different women. And so the notion is that Marguerite Oswald, the new stuff I've discovered only in the past couple of weeks is that we have a couple addresses for Marguerite Oswald going back to Algiers, Louisiana, 2136 Broadway and 277 Atlantic Avenue. Now, when they investigated those addresses, nobody could confirm them. The people who lived there said, no, we've been here 20 years. We don't know who you're talking about, right? So she obviously didn't live at those addresses. But I grew up in New York, in Brooklyn. And when I hear Broadway and I hear Atlantic Avenue, that's fucking New York, right? And so I have recently, and there's no way for me to 100% verify this except for these circumstantial evidence which keeps amounting, but no one has ever discussed the possibility that she lived in fucking New York from 1941 to 1944. But when she was allegedly in Algiers, Louisiana, she supposedly had a job as a telephone switchboard operator for the Navy at the Navy's base down in Algiers, which in 1941 to 44, you know what they were doing in Algiers? It was used as a Japanese internment camp. So she spills the beans when she probably should have never said anything about that. If she didn't say that to the Warren Commission, we would never know about that. There's no official records of it, but she claimed to have been a telephone switchboard operator. However, the story she told everybody else was that she was a telephone switchboard operator for the Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company, which is weird because the Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company is a company that ended up getting top secret contracts with the U.S. government. So there's nothing about the story makes any fucking sense. But when you go through things like her employment record, it turns out that during these years that I suspect she was in New York, she worked for a company called the Crozier Hose Company. It was like a pantyhose company. They also just so happened that very same summer to have opened a store in New Orleans. She claims to have worked at the New Orleans store, but the woman who worked in the New York store remembered her in New York. You know what I mean? So we have little hints like this that she was actually in New York, and no corroboration of the addresses. And when you look at who the guy she ended up marrying, a guy named Edwin Ekdahl, he lived about 20 minutes north of that address in New York City, the same year that she ends up meeting him. Is that just coincidence? She's 20 minutes south of this guy, but then she ends up meeting him down in Algiers, Louisiana. Bullshit. She's a liar. She was up in New York. And what's up in New York at the time? The Brooklyn Navy Yard was a hotbed of naval intelligence activity. They ran what was called the WAVES program out of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The WAVES program was the women in the Navy program. But here's the thing. It was when you think of joining the Navy, you think of, oh, I'm in for 4 or 6 years and I got a commitment and all this stuff. But that's not how they treated the WAVES program. It was more civilian women that were hired to do jobs, support jobs in the Navy, right? So it wasn't like they didn't go through boot camp and shit, but they went through their own kind of training. And so basically what I have is about just under a 3-year period where I can't account for any of Marguerite Oswald's addresses. The ones she provides are obviously bunk. Then she happens to meet the guy she will marry, living 20 minutes from where I suspect she was in New York, in the place where she would have been a switchboard operator. And then I watched a bunch of stuff on the WAVES program on YouTube. Turns out if you're in the WAVES program, you had to go through a training program in Iowa. And then if you were a switchboard operator, you had to get a top secret clearance because you were connecting high level people who were having conversations and you could listen in on their conversation. So you had to have a very high clearance to run the switchboard, which is what she claimed to be doing for the Navy in that time. So she gives herself away in these little bits by telling that she was a switchboard operator, right? So, so I put Marguerite Oswald, the real Marguerite Oswald, up in New York at that time, and no one else does.
That is so.
No one else is up there. So
that's crazy. That's crazy to me. Real quick, somebody said something to you in the comments section. We got Andrew Lauritsen of Heavyweights Life Feels. He says, Cory, I miss being able to hear these from the room next door and the good chats we had. I hope all is well.
We'll come back.
Yeah, I've been trying to get him to come back out here. I've been trying. You know, we'll see where his journeys take him. But no, dude, I mean, you're painting a picture here. It's a lot of high strangeness. I mean, it's insane high strangeness. I mean, you're looking at two versions of the same person in both of these accounts. And like I was saying before, we have these paper trails. We have, I feel based on what you're telling me, we have one that's more of a prominent paper trail, and then we have one that's kind of like on the back end,
right? Like where things like slip through, like they hit a bunch of documents, but things slip through that are connected to other documents. Like there's stuff about Biloxi when he's in Biloxi in the Marines that's all messed up. There's a bunch of documents that appear to show that he was in training a week behind when it says he actually was, but we have a graduation photograph, so it couldn't have been him. But then we have other Marines come forward and said, yeah, I was with Oswald in this graduating class and we graduated a week later. And then I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? But then you have people coming forward saying, yeah, I went through boot camp with Oswald, and then we went to Memphis, Tennessee to go to airline mechanic school. And that can't be verified by anyone. Oswald never claims to have been there. But see, this is the thing. This is what kind of trips me up, because Oswald, the majority of items when Oswald's arrested and they go and they clean out the boarding house and all the places he allegedly lived, the vast majority of items are fabricated. They're bullshit. They're total nonsensical. Like, just they're things that were written to incriminate him. But amongst those things, there were some handwritten stuff that he actually did. And one was kind of like a short autobiography in time that he was in the Marines. And in one section of this autobiography, he goes over like the the months that he was in certain places. And he accounts for everywhere that he was for like a 3.5-year period. And it all is like, makes sense. It's different from the official story, but nonetheless, he accounts for where he was every step of the way. Then in the next paragraph, he mentions having been in Biloxi, Mississippi, where he went to radar school. But that is not in the previous paragraph where he wrote out exactly where he was and when. So what are you doing, Oswald? Are you fucking lying in the second paragraph? Are you lying in the first paragraph? Where the fuck are you lying? Were you coached to say that you were at Biloxi? Because I think that was the deal. I don't think he went to Biloxi. I don't think he went there. I think he went to Memphis instead of Biloxi. I think that was what really fucking happened. But I can't prove that. So
yeah, you're looking at the two contradicting pieces of information.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's like he literally contradicted himself in the second paragraph.
But here's another thing. Here's another twist. Let me throw something else out there. In this, he joins in October of 56, and he's in America until roughly August or September, give or take, of 57, where he goes through a somewhat standardized circle of training if you're going to work in aviation. He first goes to Jacksonville, which is the aviation basics. Everyone goes there first. Then, if you're going to do radar stuff, everyone goes to Biloxi second. Then from there, everyone goes to El Toro, and then it's decided where you're going to go from there. And that's just kind of the general circuit. If you're going to be a mechanic, they send you to Memphis. And if you were going to do some other kind of specialized thing, they would send you somewhere else, right? So there was a circuit that you would do if you were in aviation.
That's
at the exact same time that Lee Harvey Oswald, both of them are going through this circuit, okay? You have Clyde Oswald, Clifford Oswald, and Clayton Oswald all going through this same program at the same time, none in the same classes, but they'll show up on the similar rosters for the larger scale groupings of assignments. So I have located no less than 5 or 6 Oswalds. So a large portion of the people who came forward and said they knew Oswald in certain places, I'm like, you didn't know the right Oswald. You knew an Oswald, but you knew a different Oswald, because I can tell you with certainty, Clayton and Clyde Oswald both went to Memphis at the exact same time that our Oswald is alleged to have been in Memphis. But I can tell you, I don't think our Oswald went to Memphis. I can't find it anywhere. And he was never at any time an airline mechanic. So there would be no need for him to go to Memphis. So it's wild how I think they utilize these other Oswalds to obfuscate the record, to obfuscate people's memory. Because I can tell you with certainty, I got 3 or 4 statements from guys who knew Oswalds in these programs who were clearly not the Lee Harvey Oswald we know. Clearly not even the duplicate Oswald. Clearly not him either. So, but let me be the first to say this. There is a lot of holes and contradiction in the story of 2 Oswalds in and of itself. There are things that I can't really work out. I have been able to kind of correct the record on some of John Armstrong's work. But John Armstrong he's made a lot of presumptions and assumptions that I've been able to be like, that's incorrect. This is how it really went down. And I'm happy with that. But there's a couple things I can't really sort out. And Armstrong appears to put the 2 Oswalds in the same place at the same time more than once. And I can't buy that at all. Like, you're not going to put 2 Lee Harvey Oswalds in the same high school in the same grade, but in different classes. Never going to fucking fly. Never. No one's going to buy it. Someone's going to catch on. Right. And then, so when you go through Armstrong's interpretation of how the Oswalds went through Beauregard Junior High School through 7th and 8th and 9th grade, basically, or actually they were in New York for 7th. So it would have been the 8th and the 9th grade and 54 to 55, 56 school year. He has them there the first semester together. And I'm like, you're full of shit, bro. There's no fucking way that they're there at the same time. Not only that, I can't place the real Oswald in New Orleans at that time. And neither can John Armstrong. So I catch John Armstrong making clear just jumps in logic on a regular basis. So I feel rather good about being able to correct the record on that. But there's some things I just can't figure out. Like, I think a lot of the time that Armstrong assumed that there were 2 people in the same place. There weren't. And that one of them was clearly doing something that nobody has any idea about. Right. He thinks that he's got it down, what schools, which one went to and when and all that stuff. But there's clear gaps in that record also, like big gaps. multiple year gaps of when we have records of one person going to school, but where would the other one be, right? So there has to be a totally separate school history that nobody knows about, right? Because you can't have these guys in the same place at the same time. I'll never buy that ever.
Well, it's like you were saying, they were using all of these different Oswalds to try and divert memory, divert focus. And, we know that even back in these times, intelligence agencies, especially the CIA, they had a very profound, deep understanding of the human psyche and how it works. And I think a lot of that came into play with this two Oswald situation based on what you're telling me. I mean, we look at a lot of the studies the intelligence agencies and CIA have done on human consciousness, the human psyche, the focus points, how they drive our focus even to this day. I mean, what we're seeing is you're showing us a very early version almost of what we're kind of experiencing today too. Almost.
Well, the thing is, a thing that really bothers me, well, it doesn't really bother me, but it's like irritates me, is that it doesn't matter how much evidence that you show some people, they will never buy it ever. Like, let's take a look at this. This is, to me, I think, a great example. So when Oswald entered the Marine Corps, he was only 16 years old, and he was exactly 5'9". Okay. Over the course of the next couple of years, he grew a couple inches, and on his way out the door, they measured him at 5'11", right? These two pictures are clearly the same person, just a couple years apart. So we have absolute slam dunk evidence that Lee Harvey Oswald is 5'11". However, the guy who was arrested in New Orleans on August 9th and in Dallas on November 22nd and then shot to death on November 24th, all those records, along with the autopsy records, show that he was only 5'9". This is, to me, this is clear cut. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. Nobody shrinks by 2 inches, period. I don't care how much weight you lose. You're not shrinking by 2 inches. And this is a picture of the two of them next to each other. It's clearly not the same fucking person.
No, you can see, like I'm with you. They could be cousins. They could be brothers.
Cousins or brothers or something like that. But there's a familial connection here somehow because there are so many similarities to them. I think the similarities, here's where I think the similarities lie, is that I think the spacing on the eyes, the spacing on the nose, the spacing on the mouth, that's what's the same. It's the details in the middle that are not the same.
Well, the other thing too that I noticed,
his chin has got a dimple in it, and this other one does not. The shoulders on this guy slant down at 45 degrees. This one does not. It's a little more outward. It
almost seems that the ears are a little higher up on the photo of the right too. Like if you're looking at a little bit higher up, not exactly. And the ears are the big thing when we're looking. I've seen that, because the ears, even diving into the whole, I don't know what your thoughts on the whole Paul McCartney thing is, but
I don't really have thoughts on it, but I've talked to fucking William Ramsey and he has sold 110% on it. And he's a smart guy.
I kind of am too. And I am too. And the biggest difference they were bringing up in that whole situation was the ears. And I mean, just case in point, what we're looking at here, I mean, the ears are definitely higher up on the photo on the right. And then, like you said, the dimple on the chin, all of that, it's almost very subtle differences, but it's noticeable if you look deeply enough.
And here's, these are two pictures from, on the left is his photograph from January 18th, 1957. That's platoon 2060. And on the right is him graduating from the radar intercept and operator course on June the 18th, 1957. So there's only a couple months difference. But still, that's not the same fucking guy. Clearly two different people. The guy on the right's got a big fat neck and he's got a much more rounded nose than the guy on the left, who's got a much more sharper disposition, right?
Absolutely.
So,
dude, it's so strange, and I'm diving into the woo territory a little bit. I mean, it's familiar relation, but I mean, is there a way we can even find a familiar relation? Because part of me is starting to think that maybe there's I'm speculating here. Don't get me wrong. I don't have evidence for this, but is it possible that this man could have been manufactured?
I don't think back in 1939.
I know. I'm
That's the thing.
throwing things.
We got to keep technology in mind here, and they didn't
Yeah,
have
no,
technology back then, and that's why they would have to fake a whole background. See, that's
I
what I
know.
was getting to at the point. The whole purpose of a legend is to create a fake history. And see, here's the deal: they used to use the identities of dead people, but the split second your enemy realizes the guy they have in capture is a dead guy, the whole gig is up. Once they do the background check and they realize that the name is to a dead guy, you're fucking busted, spy. And so then you're just dead. And so they would create a whole fake backstory to somebody, a duplicate with a backstory. And then they infiltrate somebody into the Soviet Union like they did. They can verify the back. You don't think the Soviets did a full backstory on Lee Harvey Oswald? You don't think they have ways to get Marine paperwork? Shit. They do somehow.
They do. 100%. Yeah.
Whether they tap lines or whatever, but they were going to pull the records of Lee Harvey Oswald and they would get a full backstory, history, mother, father, everything. And it would be all like legit paperwork. That was the whole point. But then what happens to the original? He's got to disappear under a different name, right? That's that's the assumption.
It's the plausible deniability. They always have to keep that plausible deniability.
Right. And so I've heard some people be like, oh, what? Like these two kids were just destined to be super spies. And I'm like, no, you motherfuckers. When the fucking Navy, who works with your parents, possibly even uses a little bit of blackmail, you never know, comes to you and says, you want to be a hero, kid? Guess what? You're special. You're going to be a hero. And we're going to make you a hero. And how much coaching does it take to take a 7-8-year-old kid and get him on board with doing stuff like this? You know what I mean?
None at all.
None at all. And so,
well, it's that psychological tactic. I've brought this up before. I mean, we were talking about how, on another episode of the show, how intelligence agencies installed these gifted programs in these schools, to I don't know exactly what they're trying to monitor in these programs, but we were talking about how easy it would be. And it would be as easy as this. All you would have is somebody from the CIA call up a school board district and go, hey, this is so-and-so from the CIA. We have this new program that we're trying to roll out into schools, to test intellect and education, reading and things like that. And you'd really be helping out your country if you got on board with this. That's all they would have to fucking say, dude. That's all they would have to say. This is how they work, and at least from what I've seen. And but no, that kind of brings into what you were talking about. But real quick, there's something I wanted to ask you tonight that I had written down. And it's actually one of the coolest things. I heard you talk about it at Liberty on the Rocks. If you can, with the time we have, if you can explain a little bit, because this is something that blows a lot of people's minds away, on how the mob, the CIA, and Mossad are essentially the same entity. And that's something a lot of people are, when you talk with people about that, they look at you like you're a biblically accurate angel. So, but I think you laid it out really good, not only on your Liberty on the Rocks talks, but some of the other stuff I've heard you say. So why don't we dive into that just for a little bit, because I think that's kind of important when it comes to all of this.
Well, really, it just goes back to common interests. And when you got Jews everywhere, there's a lot of Jewish common interests in a lot of places. So that's really the origins of the relationship between the mob and everyone else, because the mob wasn't run by the Italians. The mob was run by Jews. Meyer Lansky took over the mob in 31. Was it 31? Oh my God. He ran the mob for 40 years. Meyer Lansky, a Polish Jew, not Italian, Polish Jew, right? So that he was the linchpin relationship between everybody: the CIA, the Mossad, Corsicans, fucking Chinese. What are they called? The triads. I mean, you don't understand. Meyer Lansky might have been the boss of all bosses of the whole world. Like, for real. He was the man. He was the guy who created it all. And what happened after he left, it all fell apart, right? So if it wasn't for Meyer Lansky, there might never have been a fucking legendary mob that we know of. It probably would have died with Capone, because you got to think, after Capone, it ended up moving into the next phase, which ended up being like Tony Accardo. And well, first it was Frank Nitti, and later it would be Tony Accardo, and then Giancana. But all the while, you've got Meyer Lansky's Jewish middlemen. Whether or not people want to say they were calling the shots, I'd say they were calling the shots. You know what I mean? When a guy shows up every couple months to make sure you're still in line, he's your boss. I don't give a shit what anybody says. You might call the shots in Chicago, but when it comes to anything bigger than that, you got to, you're subservient to Mr. Lansky. And so, but yeah,
Awesome, man.
that's the relationship there. I mean, and that's what's, it seems like since this whole Trump phase has kind of taken over, this Trump hysteria has taken over, the Israelis have kind of been pushed to the back burners and their atrocities continue, yet less recognition is happening. So, they can hide, but they're always there. They're always there. That's the ever-present evil that should be eradicated. So
I get that, man. I get that. No, I wanted to bring that up because, I think, because we see that tie-in, like you were saying with Meyer Lansky. And, we've seen these tie-ins, throughout many different points in history too, of, the CIA and Mossad on the same operations, or, the CIA working with the mob, and aspects of that as well. The other thing I wanted to ask you real quick, going back to the duplicate programs, in your research, have you seen these appear elsewhere in modern times, at least after, I guess you could say, the 40s? Like any kind of hardcore evidence of this?
John Armstrong has a bunch of cases laid out in his notes that I haven't really spent a lot of time on, but he spent a lot of time on. So that's something I need to get with William Ramsey about too, and a couple other people who've mentioned other double cases to me, because part of making the case, this is going to be all my next book too, because clarifying Armstrong's work, which he got a lot wrong, is really important. And so, but no, there's I'm trying to gather evidence on other cases so I can present that this is not a one-time event. This is not an isolated event. And they're all a little different, which tells me they're all experimentation. You know what I mean? Like, so running a program like this that would take up 20 years of somebody's life or 15 years of somebody's life is a pretty big deal. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, we're looking at we're looking at, and maybe not manufacturing a person, but we're looking at least in my eyes, the heavy manufacturing of history. We're looking at the heavy manufacturing of an incident in this reality. I mean, when it comes to these two Oswalds, and it comes to the two Marguerites, and it comes to, it's almost as if it's funny. It's almost as if like there was a real version and a simulated version almost, even though we can't say that it was simulated. It's just, that's what it like speaks to me almost, is that there was a lot of this high strangeness going on. I definitely think, even though I might not be able to prove it, but I do think that intelligence agencies, at least starting from the 40s, did have a lot of knowledge on, the human psyche and human consciousness and how to manipulate it. It's something that they even still to this day do. And I mean, it's
see, here's the thing. Here's my problem with the CIA and all this shit. Like, it's all amounted to a bunch of nothing. Like, all the stuff they've ever done in history, all the spy shit, all the Cold War, all the hot war, all the everything has led to nothing. Zero. Like, nada. So I'm done thinking that they're one step ahead of anything. Period.
I'm with you on that.
Like, fuck them. Like, the whole Cold War, 50 years of tension with Russia was a waste of time, money, effort, energy, propaganda, lies. You fucking name it. It was unnecessary. Nobody wanted a nuclear war. End of story. Okay? Except a bunch of lunatics. Right? And so nothing that they did, all the billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, and still in the modern day, we got 800 fucking bases around the world. It's done nothing except create bricks, which is going to go off and have its own economy without us. Right?
I mean,
fucking
dude,
hilarious. It's hilarious.
Dude, I'm telling you, so one of the things I wanted to ask you too, I mean, do you like, and this is just for modern times, and we chatted briefly about this when we were at the Thanksgiving event, but do you feel right now potentially with this, Trump presidency, that we are potentially being swindled in some kind of way?
I don't know. We got swindled the first time around with Trump, didn't we?
Definitely. So, I mean, I just, I did that. That's something, I mean, you look at a lot of things. I mean, I don't know for sure if he's a master Kabbalist. I mean, I know Chris.
Well, I've heard that him even say that he felt like he got taken in his first administration. You know what I mean? Like, he put people in place because he was recommended people, and then they turned out to suck, like fucking John Bolton. You know what I mean? Like, so I understand his naivete, but he he did 4 years of establishment bullshit and rushed a vaccine that killed a billion people. You know what I mean? So like he's no hero in any stretch of the imagination. However, the establishment that we have existed through has turned completely authoritarian, and fuck them. So what can he possibly do that's going to be worse?
That's a very
Not much.
point.
Not much, right? And if he's going to lower taxes, he's going to get rid of the IRS. As long as he gives them the order to no longer fuck with people who make less than 50 grand a year, then I'm covered and I'm good and I'm never filing taxes ever again. And then, yeah, that's it. That's all I care about. So,
you know, I
just want to be left alone. That's what I want from the government. Leave me alone. Don't look at my finances. Okay. Just leave me the fuck alone and stay out of my life. And I'm kosher just being here in my little corner. Okay.
So, dude, I'm with you, and I think that's what we all want. I think that's what a lot of people, you know, who have our mentality and our train of thought that they actually want. And I was going to bring this up before we sign off tonight, but so there was this. I follow this person on X, and she posted that we should normalize sending jars of shit to the IRS during tax season, and
well,
and I was like,
so there is justice though when it comes to fucking financial stuff. So let me just give you this one example. Recently, this going on right now. In 2021, Congress passed a law had to do with corporate transparency, but it didn't have to do with businesses that made more than $5 million a year, which means small business. So they targeted small business, and they said by January 1st, 2025, all small businesses needed to submit to the Federal Financial Crimes Bureau, which is a law enforcement agency, had to submit the names of the beneficial owners, meaning the people who owned the stock in the companies, had to report their names and give their ID and send it to this law enforcement agency in Washington, D.C. that investigates people like this, right? So it went back and forth in the courts because it's blatantly unconstitutional. If you haven't noticed, all business is regulated by the states, not the federal government. The federal government can do taxation, but they can't regulate shit when it comes to business. Unless except you're going to be dealing with like nuclear materials and regulatory type stuff, right? So, but it's a state issue, and so this went back and forth in the courts, and then it got thrown out and overturned by the courts. Then it went up to the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit said no, it's not going to be overturned, and they reimposed it. But then it went to the full panel Fifth Circuit, and they threw it out as unconstitutional. And so now the government is trying to take it to the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court we know how they're going to throw it out. It's going to be unconstitutional because everyth's unconstitutional to this current Supreme Court, which I love. So, but ultimately the government, yeah. There are checks and balances that are in place because of our system that still work, which I think is great. The fact that all these cases against Trump are being dropped are showing that the system works. You know what I mean? Like, so no matter how much we hate it when it works against us, the system in general here in America still works, you know? Just leave me alone. Leave me and my money alone. I don't make enough to fucking affect anything. All the tax money I should have ever paid in my life wouldn't even buy one fin on one missile that blew up one baby in Palestine. You know what I mean? So there's no point in me giving you any money. Fuck off. And that's what I got to say.
I'm with you. I'm with you, dude. I mean, yeah, just leave us the fuck alone. I mean, bottom line. I mean, you know, it's just it's the way it should be. I mean, I think there's, you know, when it even comes to the taxes and stuff like that, there's a whole other conversation about that too. But like, you know, the whole straw man incident, you know, the Capitalist Minutia and the Social Security card and things like that. But nonetheless, Cory, man, thank you for coming on tonight. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be my first guest on season 3. Much appreciated, sir. So I have in the link, and Cory has it as his handle. I also have it in the Rumble and the YouTube video descriptions, coryhughes.org. If you'd like to reach out to Cory and check out his work. He also are you still doing Understanding Propaganda, or did you put that down?
Well, I took a break, but I revived it. It's all part of my Substack now. So my Substack is bloodyhistory.substack.com. That you got to pay for because, well, you know, I'm talking about Hitler all the time there. So if you want to hear about Hitler, you got to pay. That's how it goes.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And then you also have Bloody History, which is on our network, you know, that was released within the past year as well. So
yeah, I've done like 250 episodes in just over a year.
Holy shit, man. You've been
I've done 150 episodes of Bloody History World War II. I've done like fucking 400 episodes in like just over a year. So
Dude, you outpaced me in my first season. Damn, dude. Well, that's awesome.
well, if I don't, I feel guilty, like I'm not doing anything, and I should go hurl myself off a bridge as like a fucking homeless bum. So
don't come to Denver and do that, man. We've had a whole bunch of that kind of stuff going out here. I mean, but no, man. Honestly, dude, I gotta say, like, again, you've blown me away. I mean, your intelligence when it comes to this matter and your research, I commend you, dude, because some of the stuff that you had to go through to find all of this out. I can only imagine the stacks of paper, the books, all of this stuff that you had to go through, man. And I got to say, dude, definitely hats off. And the 2 Oswald thing, I'm going to say I'm definitely on board with that. It does not surprise me.
The audacity is what surprises me, man. Like,
I know,
if you're going to do
this,
if you're going to do this, like, why not keep them separate and then just destroy one of them's records? That's it. Just destroy the records. That's it. That's all you got to fucking do. Have 2 separate kids. You raise them. You go through the Marines with 2 separate records, and then you just destroy one set of records. That's it. And then you're fucking golden. I mean, it's almost like they were so dumb. It's like, and Angleton was in on this. This was Angleton's ball of wax. Angleton was the king of deception. He had to have been in on the Oswald scheme from the jump, and it was probably his idea from the get-go. I can't think of anybody else who was in on the deception game like him. So,
man, that is just now. I'm going to be digging into this myself now after this. I'm a big believer. I mean, of course, you agree with me too that a lot of our history has been doctored, and
that's what they're hiding. That's why they won't release the documents, because it'll be a fucking connect the dots to our history is totally fake. That's what it'll fucking lead to. I mean, fuck. I can't even. My mind just explodes when I think of the possibilities of what that means.
Mine does too, and it's something I've always had a feeling about, and I've seen glimpses of evidence, I guess you could say, throughout my own research that our history is definitely not what it appears to be. But
like you've seen the pictures of them building Stonehenge, right?
I've seen this,
motherfuckers. I thought that shit was thousands of years old. No, they built it in like the 30s, and there's pictures of them building it. They're like, oh, well, we dismantled it just to reassemble it. Blow me.
Dude. So there's also this. So I'm going to run this by you. This one's out. This one's pretty interesting. And I mean, I found a little piece. There's a theory that's going around that the Catholic Church added 1,000 years to.
You're talking about the phantom time theory.
Yeah.
It's a little different than that. They like it was something like it was the year like 700 that the emperor wanted it to be year 1000 when he was the emperor, and so the rumor has it he changed the calendar. But the problem is, like, it doesn't jive with the Japanese or Chinese calendars or other calendars.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting concept. It's a great conspiracy theory, but I don't think it flies at all. But that doesn't mean something like that can't be true in some other regard. Like, is it really the year 2025?
That's an interesting. Well, they were going off, I guess. What was it? The one of the biggest things they were going off when I was looking this up is, so if you look at the tombs of the British soldiers when they got to India, and they have these tombs of the British soldiers that passed away once they got there, and on the dates, the dates that they passed away are completely different. So I mean, than what we know as in history. I mean, we're looking at 1,000 years less. I mean, like they said, I forgot what year one guy passed away in the year 787. You know what I mean? And we look like, well, we would think like 1787.
I've seen where people show the buildings that have like the Roman numerals, but the Roman numerals show like 1,000 years off. I've seen that. I don't know how to interpret that, but I don't put too much stock into it because there's been a lot of history that kind of makes sense. I mean, they had the Dark Age period, and how much do we really know about what happened between year 300 and fucking year 1300? You know what I mean? I can understand, like, there could be some shenanigans in there. Actually, there's a lot of room for shenanigans in there with arrogant kings and whatnot, who thought that they had the right to fucking shape mankind's future and whatever.
Dude, definitely, man. It's interesting, but yeah, man, nonetheless, if you don't mind sticking around for just a couple minutes after we sign off, guys, welcome to season 3 of BG Cast. Thank you all for joining me tonight again for another Wednesday Live podcast. It's great to be back. And again, if you guys by chance would like something like this to help support the channel, definitely let me know. Like I said, this is the OG model, but I am getting some other ones made. So if you guys are interested, and also too, if you would like to join the BG Collective Discord, I'm starting up a community of people who are actually trying to get the ball rolling with solutions. So if you would like to join my Discord, the BG Collective, drop me a line here on the video. X at BG-Cast with 3 underscores between BG and Cast. IG at BG-Cast with 2 underscores between BG and Cast. And of course, you can find me on Facebook just as BG Cast. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I will be back next week with Autumn, who is a spiritual parent and a holistic health coach. And we are going to be breaking down some of her methods and some of her story and her views on what it means to be healthy, what it means to be sound, and how we can stop the government from fucking with our food and our health. So I will be back next week with Miss Autumn. Other than that, guys, thanks again for joining me. Have yourselves a good night and take care.